Hello and welcome. In our previous tutorials, we were able to set up our backend, which comprises of a Django REST service, and we were also able to create and configure our client application. So in this video, we are going to containerize or Dockerize our node application or our client application, and let's just jump straight into it. So inside this client folder, I'm going to create uh, a Dockerfile similar to what we approach that we had done in creating the other one for the backend. So after creating the Dockerfile, we will import or we will pull a node image, and I'll use the node 18 Alpine version 3.18. So I will also set up or tell Docker to use this as the working directory. And then the first file that I will copy, we have this package.json file that has the details. So I will copy that file, and then I will run the npm install command. And then I will copy the entire directory, specifying it using a dot. And then I will expose the port that is being used. I'll still stick to the default port that Vite uses, which is 5173. And then we'll start the Vite development server. So I will just create this command, npm run dev npm run dev. So this really should work. So we have created the Docker file. The next step will be to add this service, because the Docker file is only as good as what will this one will help us doing is it will help us in our building the image, but we need to add it to our list of services. Yeah, so we are going to add it in the under services in the Docker compose file. So remember we have the database, Postgres, Django, and I can just add the client service here. So I'll just call it client. And the first thing I'll add is build. And then we'll use the context now will be different because we're using the reference from the to the client folder. So I'll just add this as client. And the Docker file, I've also called it Docker file. So that is the name of the Docker file. And then we can also add the container name. So I can just call it client. Copy this text for health facilities. That is the container name. And then I'll also add the volumes. So for the volumes, I'll just point the client to the folder. You remember there's a folder that I have set as the working directory, which is the user src app. And then I will also add another one that refers to the modules folder. Okay, let me just copy this. Just copy, paste that for node module. So in case we decide, or in case in our development we decide to install something or install node any new additional module, then it's going to update and it's going to be picked up by the application. So let's also add the ports. So for the ports, I'm going to I'm just going to keep it as it is, 75173 5173. And then we can just specify the environment. In this case, the environment will be node environment equals to development, because we're using it in development mode. So in case you are using it in production, but you can refer to the documentation, you can check, you can now set this to production. Okay, so we'll also add a depends on. So in this case, this depends on the Django service. Yeah, and then in this case, yeah, we can now, let's leave it as it is, and then you can just save. So let me see from my Docker if I have any services that are running using the Docker ps command here. So I have Django and the database services which are running. So let me stop them. So I will exit here. So I'm in the parent or the root folder. So I can just use my make command. So in this case, I'm going to stop. Okay, let me just stop the services. Oh yeah, it's complaining that this Django for health facilities that I have specified here. Oh yeah, it should be Django. This is just the name of the service. So the service name is Django. So that's how it should be. So let me just stop the Django service. Yeah, I can use the Docker PS to check. So there are no services that are running. So let me just clear. So in this case, I'm going to add some few things here in the make file. Let me just copy these two commands, and then I'll just add them below here. Yeah, so I can just name this start client, and also this one I can just call it start client. So this one will start just say start client service. This one starts it in the background. So we are going to run the Docker Compose app, but we need to specify the name of the service. So in this case, it will be client. So set this one here, client. So let me run the command manually. So we have Docker Compose app. Actually, you should build, but anyway, yeah, it will just do an automatic build. So let's see the logs and see what goes on. So in this case, it has pulled the the Docker or the node, sorry, the node 18 image, and now it's doing the build. So it has installed. So for the run npm I, it may take some time, but you can look for alternative installers like pnpm and yarn. Probably going to install with maybe lesser time. So now it is copying it has copied also the folders, and now it's exporting the layers. So it has built this image, and whenever let's say you open your Docker desktop, if you're using Docker desktop, you will be having an additional image. Yeah, so it seems like our app is not running. So let's see why. So after making a few edits, so inside the Docker file for the node, we were able to we added these expose command to expose this port, and we also added some these two sub commands to be able to expose the port to the other containers. So if you look at these the logs after running it, then you'll see that we have local uh, running on the local host, and you also have these the network that has also been added. So then we also have, of course, we have the Django container that is running on the usual port 8000. Another change that we made is I had added some node module here instead of node modules. So I've corrected that. I'm actually going to remove this directory because we don't need it. It should be node modules. And then I also added this. So this one exposes the port. This first part is the host port, and this is the container port. So inside the container, this is the port that is there. So we are mapping it to the host container port, the same host container port as 5173. And then I also made use of the network so that these services can be running in the same network. So that way we can be able to ensure that. So imagine if you have very many services, microservices that are running. So you may need to make use of the networks. But nevertheless, you can refer this to the Docker documentation for details. So this is how our map looks like. So you'll notice that the URL is running on localhost. So let me just do a refresh. It fetches the data from the backend, and then it displays the points to the on the front end in the map. Yeah, so these are the points, and you see if I either zoom into one point and click, it displays the name, or the name and the facility. So the facility in this case is a pharmacy called Ambiri Chemists. Yeah, if I also click another one, this is what you see: clinics, which is a clinic, and Aga Khan Hospital, which is a hospital. That one does not just as clinic. Yeah. So this summarizes our containerization of the front end or the client app. So you can make a reference to, of course, Docker best practices in terms of creating the Docker file and also creating the services or working with the multiple services using Docker Compose. Because, but for this one, since it's a test, local test purposes, so we have been able to do what we can do. So the next step, we'll be looking at how to, we will add another service, which is Nginx. So Nginx acts as a load balancer, and it can also be used for as a reverse proxy server. And we will see how we can set it up in this project. So if you find this video to be of interest to you, you can drop a like, as it helps with the YouTube algorithm. Feel free also to share with colleagues, and don't forget to click the subscribe button for to get a notification whenever I create a new content. So let's meet in the next one, and thank you for watching.